I was like kind of reflecting on my trip with my friend and kind of some stuff she was saying. So basically my best friend Liv, she has lived in London now for 5 years, and we had this like heart to heart when we were there, and we went to college together. So she is like, you know, she was living in like the Boston area. We like went to UNH together, and she said she was going to move to London for like a few years and then move home. And I always thought that she was going to move home. Like that was always the goal. She was like, I will move to Boston or New York or something. And, you know, a year went by and then 2 years went by, and now it's been 5 years. And I asked her, I was like, do you think you'll ever move back? And she was like, no, never. And I was just like, what? Like, why not? And she explained something that I actually think was like super, super intelligent. And she was like, listen, when I lived in Boston, like I loved it. We had great friends and it was an awesome city and we had a blast. She was like, but it wasn't until I moved to London that I realized like what it feels like to feel at home somewhere. And she kind of described like moving there, and she was like, the people that I met, like these are my people. Like I relate to them. I understand them. They understand me. Like the way the city is, like she's like, I can't explain it in any other way other than I felt like I was like, every time I come here, I felt like I was coming home. And as much as I loved Boston, like now when I go back there, it's just like it hits me like it's just not home. And like usually it doesn't take away from like how much I love my friends and stuff. It's just not home. And I don't know if I could ever leave. And when she said that, I was like, that is so crazy to me, because I think a lot of times like when we're in our mid-20s, like we spend so much time like trying to figure out like what job should I do, like who should I date, like where should I move and stuff. And I think like sometimes the answer is like you kind of have to go off of like where you're living, like how you feel when you're there, like when you go to a place, like really paying attention to like
how the city makes you feel.
Yes,
or the
like when I'm here, like
country.
Do I feel comfortable? Because like we've all been in a situation where like I know like whenever I go on vacation, right, like if I go to like Nashville or something like that, I have so much fun, but by like the last day there's this little part of me that feels a little homesick, which is so weird. Even though like I travel all the time, I still feel this like feeling in my chest where I'm like, I'm ready to go home. But like there's some places I've been to, like New York or London, where I don't feel like that. Like by the last day, I'm like, I don't want to leave. Like I feel like so comfortable here. And I feel like I feel like most people probably don't spend enough time like thinking about like how important it is, like before you settle down and like start a family, if that's what you want or whatever, to like find the place that you feel at home before you do those things.
Right.
And like put down roots.
I think there's a piece of me that deep down knows that I would be so much happier and would thrive in like honestly Florida in a warm, not just a warm climate, but specifically Florida. I don't know why. It's something about when I'm there, it's like an indescribable feeling. I've never felt like that anywhere else. Like I just feel like Florida is where I'm meant to be. And it's weird because I almost moved to Florida in 8th grade. I don't know why we didn't end up going, but we didn't. And I applied to school when I was applying to colleges. I applied to school in Florida. I almost went. I got accepted to one college in Florida, but I ended up not going because I was stupid and let a boy hold me back.
Oh, is that why you didn't go?
Yeah, so dumb. But I feel like there's been so many times when, I don't know, the universe was pointing me in that direction and it never worked out. And I kind of just like gave up on it. But obviously we go to Miami every year. And like there are times when I go to Florida that's not Miami. And I just still feel like I should be here. And I feel like a lot of people don't always get that opportunity to either feel that feeling or like even know that it exists, because maybe they don't have the luxury to travel as much. And, you know, there are people that haven't even left their home state or haven't left the country or haven't, you know, traveled to the other side of the country, wherever you're listening on. So they don't know what's out there, and they don't know, like, I've never been like a cold snow weather girl. Like I would not thrive in somewhere like Denver, Colorado, or wherever, cold climates. Obviously I live in one, but there's seasons and we get the warmth. And I just think that if people were to follow their heart, whatever, how corny that sounds, they would be able to live a much more fulfilled life. Because I give your friend a lot of credit for doing that, because I feel like that's not really the norm to like leave.
Right.
And that's the hardest part, is leaving.
It is. And I think like what you said is so true, because I think I don't know. I think a lot of us reach a point, some of us honestly might like, we live where we live and like we don't like, we're like happy and we're good and we don't have a desire to leave, and that's fine. It's also different for everyone, right? Like there's some people who live in the city and they're like, they feel the opposite. They're like, I can't wait to get the hell out of the city and like move somewhere a little bit more like remote. Like that's what will make them feel peaceful and happier. Which I know is like the case for my parents. Like after so many years of living in the city, they're like, they love living outside of the city now because they feel so much more peaceful there. But to your point, I think like there's like this element of like fear too, where it's like the hardest decision is just to like wake up and make that decision and know that like things are going to be different and you're taking such a big gamble on your life. And she was saying that, she was like, we all graduated college and a bunch of us moved to Boston and some of us moved to New York City, and she moved to another country and like did it by herself. And I'm sure it was like super, scary, but like I think she always knew like her family, like a lot of them are from England originally. Like they live in California, but a lot of them were originally from England. So I think she kind of just like felt it, like, wow, like I want to give this a try. And she did. And I'm sure it was scary, but like she was just saying, she was like, I'm so thankful that I did. And it's also cool because just like seeing her now, like versus college, like she's always been like this like bubbly, like fun person, but she's like glowing. Like you can just tell she's in her element. Like the friends she has, like they get her and she's just like so happy. And I feel like seeing someone that you care about, like literally like glow like that and just be like in their right spot, like so confident, so sure of themselves, like that makes you happy as a friend to see, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I do think you're right. Like a lot of people might not get that chance, but I think like if you're going to take a risk, this is the time to do it. Because especially if you're not completely tied down yet, like if you don't, it's a lot harder when you're like married with children, like again, if that's what you want, to like up and move your whole family than it is when you're like 20 and single. And I think like recently a lot of my friends, like a lot of my really close friends have like up and moved because they're like, all right, like I'm not married. I am like, just starting off in my career and I can transfer offices or like do whatever. And I'm just going to do it. And they have. And some of them have loved it and they've fallen in love with where they've lived. And others are like, yeah, like it was a great experience, but I'm going to move back. Because like realistically, you can come back if it doesn't work out. So I just think it's like important. Like if you feel like you're like, I don't know. I feel like if you in your heart like have always felt something, like I think you should pursue it. Like even if you don't have any reason to believe it. Like I always thought ever since I was younger, like I was like, I want to live in like a big city. Like I want to live in New York. I want to live in Boston. I want to live in like London, like something like that. Even before I had even been to those places. But I feel like sometimes like you just like know in your heart like what you want to do.
I think moving to a new place too, it can be scary, especially when you don't have like a friend group or any friend for that matter. But it really takes time. Like I feel like you can, travel somewhere, let's say Austin, Texas for a work trip or whatever, and you could love the environment. And then you decide, I love it so much, like I'm actually going to move. But then you move there and then it's not what you expected because you don't have a group of people, like you don't have a built-in tour guide to show you all the cool spots. Right. And it can be super discouraging. Like I remember when I first moved to Boston, the first year that I lived here, I didn't know anything but Southie. I didn't know where to go out. I didn't know what the cool spots were to go to. I didn't even know what all the neighborhoods were. Like it literally took me probably like 2 full years to know like what's the difference between Southie and South End. Like I had no idea. And then once I really learned Boston, I fell in love with it. Like I liked it, but I wasn't like sold on Boston. I was like, yeah, this is a nice place to live. It's way better than Rhode Island. Like thank God to get out of there. Like anything's better than living in my small town in a small state. But it took me time to really appreciate where I was living. And I feel like so many people like get up and just go because it's just not clicking right away. But I really do think it takes time. And I think if you just stick it out, you'll be able to really adjust to where you are and it'll be worth it if you just stay.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think there's a huge difference between like running from your problems and like going
True.
somewhere because that's how you feel. Because I feel like that's important to note too. I think the other like end of this that I see sometimes is people who like anytime life gets hard, anytime something happens, they're like, all right, I'm just gonna like move somewhere else, or I'm just gonna like change jobs, or just gonna find new friends. And sometimes that is necessary, but if you find yourself constantly restarting, I feel like maybe that might not be the most healthy too.
Yeah.
So that's not really like so much what we're talking about here. I think it's more so like when you just like maybe you're perfectly happy and like life's going well, but you just feel like you have like this like calling, like your heart is telling you that like you want to go do something, like you should just freaking go do it. Like I feel like that's like the number one thing we took away from the pandemic, like as shitty as it was of a time. I feel like it really made us realize like when we were sitting there doing nothing every single day, it was like Groundhog's Day, that I was like, wow, like I am not going to take any of my life for granted ever again. And I feel like that's why I've like tried to put such an emphasis the past like year or so on like traveling and experiencing things and like whatever, because I was like, you just don't want to take it for granted. So I feel like if you want to do something, you should just try it, and you never know.